Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Terry Moore. Thanks for being on the show, Terry.
Thank you, Whitney. It's an honor to be with you.
Terry is an owner of ACI Apartment Consultants Incorporated and a top apartment broker focused on 50 units or less. He is the only broker in the country to have won the Triple Crown of Investment Brokerage, Deal Maker of the Year, Transaction of the Year, and CCIM of the Year. That's impressive, Terry. I don't care who you are. That's impressive.
It is, and I wish I were that good. There may have actually been a typo. It's more like the county of San Diego. So out of 3.5 million people, I'm fortunate to do that. So I'm grateful for any award. I wish I were the nation's best, but not even this broker has that much vanity.
You're doing pretty good. But all of his 15 group investments made money for his investors. In his spare time, he summited Kilimanjaro at 59 and took up triathlons after the age of 60. So, Terry, thank you again for your time. It's an impressive bio, and we're happy to have you on the show. Give the listeners a little more about who you are, and let's dive in.
I'm fortunate to be married above my station for 42 years. And our team has helped a couple of hundred people become millionaires or multimillionaires. We've actually had 2 billionaire clients, one of whom is still alive. But essentially, we help real estate investors, mostly who are involved in San Diego County. We help them make the most important financial choice of their next decade. And for many of them, that's should we buy, should we sell, should we refinance? Should we stay in apartments? Are we ready to do triple nets? So we're a client-centered broker trying to help winners become even more successful.
Nice. So helping investors really to make those crucial decisions, right? I mean, I feel like, somebody like yourself is such an important teammate, on our team as an operator, as a syndicator, so tell me about, how do people find somebody like yourself and start to develop that relationship?
Well, I hope that your beloved never gets brain cancer, but just in case, you look for an expert. You don't have to know the expert. You need to know how to find the expert. I wrote a book, and in the book, one of the chapters is how to find a great expert. In that particular case, it was how to find an expert broker. But essentially, you ask people who should know. And it's like the 7 degrees of separation. You don't know everybody, but you know somebody who knows somebody. If you knew a surgical nurse, the surgical nurse would know who are the great physicians and who are the klutzes. And essentially, most of our business comes repeat and referral. And when it's referral, it's because we seem to have handled things well. But essentially, there's a local realtor group. There's often investment clubs or investment groups in your areas. There's gurus, there's titans in your areas. There's bankers, appraisers. There's folks who know who the players are. And if you get a half a dozen potential players, then you come up with your list of questions. And it's not just the nicest person in your Kiwanis club, the most funny person in the Toastmasters. It's not the person in the congregation necessarily. You might meet a finalist or a semifinalist that way, but I suggest that you want to find somebody who is an expert and who has your best interest at heart. And that's different from the one who's got the most awards and is a salesman of the year at Acme Corp. Because they might be a great salesman, but that doesn't mean that they've got your best interest at heart. Now, how you categorize what you're looking for is different from what I would, but I want somebody who is expert and cares about me and is interested in my satisfaction. So I spend a lot of time trying to sort by not just do they know what they're doing. Competence is the starting line. But if they're only interested in making $1 gazillion for themselves or getting another headline for themselves, I can't afford that. That's worse than mediocrity.
Sure. So, what about the person that's listening that says, "Oh, wait a minute, Terry, I have, little to no experience in real estate. I'm trying to get started. How do I make that relationship with that expert, broker for say that really is probably not going to give me much time of his day? Who should they look for?"
I get that. When we were successful here, I took what to me was a big stack of money, and I went to a state on the other side of the country. And I walked in with my suitcases full of cash, feeling really proud. And I talked to one of the best brokers in the state. And roughly speaking, he said, "Kid, occasionally we get scraps as small as what you're talking about at the bottom of the barrel, but you're too small for me." Well, guess what? I didn't deal with him, but I found somebody else. Essentially, you need to get somebody that you think is competent, and you may not be able to get the world champion for you. And when you do your first syndication, you may not be able to get into the very best syndication, but essentially you move forward kind of a half a step at a time. And the people who are excellent at any field, they're routinely trying to figure out how can I get just a little bit better. And if you don't blow it at first, if you make some progress, you'll be smarter the second time around, the seventh time around, the 27th time around. And the steady improvement isn't part of it, but essentially try to get in. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to go to a different room. And if you're the dumbest person in the room, that's okay if you're paying attention. So it's all right to get no. Failure is part of the path of success. If you haven't failed, you're not trying hard enough. I don't want you to beat your head against the wall, but try to get in as big a league as you can handle and then learn a lot. Seems to work.
Yes. No, that's great advice. I love what you said about, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need a different room, and it's okay to be the dumbest person as long as you're listening. I love that. And so, you mentioned, knowing that they have our best interest at heart. And I just wonder, how are you judging that? Because I know a lot of us, wonder, oh, wait a minute, is he just trying to make another sale here? Or, or am I getting taken advantage of? How have you navigated that, or would suggest that we do?
Well, 100 years ago, your grandfather, my grandfather, probably grew up in a little bitty town. Just about everybody knew everybody, and it was relatively easy then. Now we've got the internet and social media. So you can Google a lot of folks. You can find people, LinkedIn or somebody else. San Diego's got over 3 million people, but the reality is we're the biggest small town on our side of the Mississippi. So people who want to know about me, they can find people. I've got 50 videos. People can say, "Oh, well, I see that you know Joyce or George or Tom," and whether it's LinkedIn, they can find somebody who can say, here's the inside track. A lot of folks who promote, whether they're promoting investments or they're promoting brokerage, will have some kind of public presence, and they should give you the names of people who've dealt with them. Do the kind of interview that you would do there. Your beloved need brain cancer surgery. So who do you pick? Don't just talk with the ones they give you, but who else do you know who used the services of this person? Again, when somebody's got a bunch of money to play with, maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's 50 million, whatever it is, it's a lot to you. You want to be careful with it. You want to be a good steward, and you can do a lot of investigation about the people. One of my best mentors, I didn't understand how wise he was at the time, but he said it's better to be in a bad deal with good people than a good deal with bad people. I didn't quite get that. My biggest client got in a great deal with a bad person. It was outrageously successful. And every month that my friend, who was a syndicator, was in the deal, he regretted having this other fellow in the deal. The investor was so greedy and he was so unpleasant. It was just a bad deal, even though the investment was outrageously successful. You will always find another good deal, but it's relatively hard to get out of a bad deal. You might get out of it and you kiss all your money goodbye, and that's not much fun. Investigate before you invest and spend a little bit more time. If your beloved had brain cancer, how hard would you look?
Hmm. So Terry, you wrote this book, Building Legacy Wealth. Why don't you give us, a key thing out of your book that you're telling people to help them to build legacy wealth?
Well, one of the things, people will read the book because they want to know how to build wealth. I wrote the book because I wanted to talk to them about legacy. And one of the things that I mentioned in the early beginning is some people should not be landlords. If you're a people pleaser, you may not want to be on the front line. I think of real estate investment as face-to-face capitalism. There's some people where the right answer is you buy and sell your Google stock at 2 o'clock at night and you don't talk to nobody. That's the right answer for some folks. And in the book, I hope I say it gracefully, but in effect, I say, if you're a bigot, please, 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 please do not become a rental owner. But I offer some suggestions in there that are a little bit less self-diagnosis. But essentially, lots of people can do it, but you need to make sure that you're comfortable with it. Most real estate is relatively patient. A 2-year turn is a relatively fast turn for a lot of real estate. For a day trader, that's, 700 lifetimes. But part of it is seeing what you're good at. One of the ideas that came up in writing the book was poor people should know how rich people work, and rich people should know how poor people live. Recently, I served a guy who has a luxury car dealership and his wife, who is a private banker. They're landlords, but as it turned out, they're landlords of homes that rent for $2,000 a month and more. I showed them kind of an ordinary apartment building that their landscaper would live in, that her daycare provider would live in, the person who washes the dishes. And essentially, they freaked out. They went tilt. They could not imagine. They didn't know how poor people live. They walked away from a better than average deal because they said, well, gosh, to fix my kitchen would cost, and then they named 4 times as much as it would take to fix the whole apartment. You simply need to make sure that it's the right fit for you. And for some people, it's not. The book has a few pages that give you some diagnostic to say, if in these situations, you probably shouldn't be the main front line. It might be that if you're a people pleaser, you hire a property manager who has some of those conversations in your behalf. You can still manage. Maybe you should be an investor in a limited partnership. That's a perfectly good thing for some people.
One thing that has made me successful is something that most people don't think of. It's the way that I've branded myself online. If you want to brand yourself to raise more capital, then I suggest working with my friend Adam Adams. So go ahead, scroll down, and find the link in the show notes. Are there any other special things that you suggest in the book that are not standard practice that we haven't mentioned?
I have a national writing coach, and he thought that we had a couple of things in there that were novel. Sellers routinely get multiple, if it's done right, sellers routinely get multiple offers. So in effect, sellers have a competition. They are the judge in the beauty contest, and they say, we got buyer A, buyer B, buyer C. They routinely get multiple choices. Part of what our craft is we kind of reverse that. And so on the buyer, we strongly advocate writing multiple offers. If you and your investors came to San Diego, you looked at the thing and you said the risk reward makes sense. And I would say, here's the deal, dude. We need to write 10 offers where we got a 50-50 chance of getting a counter. If it's listed for $2 million and you write $1.5 million, you're wasting your time and mine, forget it. But let's write 10 offers where you got a 50-50 chance of getting a counter. Now, some of the deals, they're not going to play. They're going to be gone before we get there. But if we get 3 or 4 counter offers, then I have what I call an offer dashboard, which kind of says, here's where we are. Out of these 4 options, here's how they each look. If you're going to bet on a race, most people bet on the race at the beginning. Well, what if you could bet on the race a quarter of the way through, or halfway through, or 3/4 of the way through? I've got an offer dashboard that says, out of the ones that are still standing, what's our best guess about what your outcome will be? Now, my best guess is going to be wrong. You'll be well informed, and you'll have some guesses too, and we'll come up with our best estimate. But the two things are multiple offers and then comparing the things. You're not looking for the best deal of the galaxy. If you are, you'll never buy. But if you're looking at the best of the available options in your price range, that's doable. And so we have two tools that have worked well for our clients in terms of ranking the ones which are worth writing offers on, and then getting in that ballpark, getting close to the ones that we've got a chance at, and then periodically updating them to say, all right, based on where we are today, what are your two or three best options? And then throwing out the ones that don't work and keep them moving forward on the ones. Some people look at investing like a marriage proposal. I'm not going to ask this person for a date until I know they're the perfect mate. No, wrong choice. Better, coffee date. You invite a few people for coffee dates. The ones that don't work, you're courteous, have a nice life, goodbye, you're done. The ones that are kind of interesting, maybe you have breakfast, maybe you have lunch. Maybe eventually you get engaged. But you just need at first a broad screen and then intelligent winnowing to make sure that you're getting the ones where you can benefit them, where you can benefit the property, and you can create value for other people. It's a bunch of little steps. It's not the home run.
What about standing out to that seller? You talked about that seller, getting to pick from numerous people, and you talked about, as the buyer, we need, we may put out 10 offers, and then I love how you broke that down. Maybe we have 3 then that we're actually getting to pick from then and move forward with, at that point. But what about, a way that the buyer can stand out to that seller that's getting numerous offers?
Sure. Smart question. Part of what I suggest in the book is a little bit of self-diagnosis. An unexamined life isn't worth living. If you figure out what your skills are. One of my friends says, what is your superpower? Have you ever heard of that? Actually, you're the guy who said that. So if you know what you excel at, then you can accent that. If you can take risk away from the seller, if you can create value that doesn't cost you very much, that's a good thing. So one of my clients, when we were in a competitive situation, he offered a relatively large chunk of non-refundable money relatively quickly. We did an inspection for a buyer today, somebody who has multiple properties. He wrote an all-cash offer. We looked at wasn't quite as ugly as Homemade Sin, but it won't make the front cover of the insurance magazine's investment publication. But essentially, this guy can solve a problem for the seller, and that is he doesn't need a loan, he doesn't need an appraisal, and the fact that the building is worn and has some things that are not in compliance with code and maybe never were, this guy can use his strength. He can give to the seller peace of mind and certainty of close, and that should be worth some extra money. But part of it is trying to figure out what problem can I solve for the other guy. And not everybody thinks that way. Lots of people think, well, how do I make the most money? And it's kind of a shallow life, and it's not necessarily a productive way to make money. But if you are trying to create value for the other person, if you're trying to take risk away from the other person in a way that's not scary to you, you can get more than your fair share of deals. By the way, if you have a circle of influence, the syndicator, the broker, whoever else is involved, and they have a track record and they're known as being trusted and competent, we've won more than our fair share of deals, partially because people trusted us. And they looked us up and they figured out we have clients who do what they say and say what they do. And we recently won an assignment where there were other people who also were impressive, but they did some research on them and they did some research on us, and they said, we don't like the number you told us, but we believe the number you told us. The other guy said something that sounded better, but we think you're telling us the truth and not what we want to hear. And we're going to try to deliver on that.
I like that. Well, unfortunately, Terry, we were running low on time, but I've got a few more questions for you.
Sure.
And so one that everybody wants to know is how are you prepared or suggesting people prepare for this potential downturn that everybody's talking about?
I hope we live long enough to see several of them. I predicted this current recession about 3 years ago, and well, it hasn't happened yet. It doesn't hurt to have extra liquidity. In San Diego County, recessions are kind of immaterial to us. We don't cut prices. We don't cut rents. I won't say bulletproof, but we're so diversified, it's not a big deal here. But I have gotten in trouble when I didn't have enough cash, when I didn't have enough reserve, and so I try to avoid that in the future. I routinely tell people, have a little bit more cash than you think you need. You might need it.
Great advice. So, Terry, what's a way that you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
I got a coach who was smarter than I am, who told me the truth, whether I wanted it or not. I did want it. And it persistently told me the truth when I wasn't doing it. Coaches help you do better than you could on your own. And some people say, gosh, I can't afford a coach. But if you look at the best in almost any field, they've got coaches. Whoever your favorite sports player is, he or she probably has a coach.
Numerous coaches normally, right? You said
Yes.
coaches.
I've got
plural.
3 coaches and there's only one of me. And that's kind of ludicrous, but I'm better for my clients because of what they've challenged and pushed me to do.
Couldn't agree more.
One of the ideas that Malcolm Gladwell popularized is 10,000 hours. And it's not 10,000 hours of doing exactly the same thing. It's doing things you're not very good at. You try it, you fall on your face. You try it, you fall on your shins. You try it, you fall on your shoulder. You try it, you stumble a little bit. You try it, you do it a little bit further. You fall again. It's trying things you're not good at. That's what deliberate practice is. It's not repeating what you're already good at. It's practicing what you haven't mastered yet. That's what's hard, is routinely setting the bar higher and higher.
Is that out of a specific book, out of Gladwell's book? Or do you know?
Malcolm Gladwell has read half a dozen books, and I don't remember which one that is.
No, he's got some really good ones. I just wondered. Yeah, he's definitely.
I will think of it right after the interview is over.
Right.
But if you look for deliberate practice in Malcolm Gladwell, he didn't invent the idea, but he popularized it. But it's in one of his 3 most popular books, but I don't remember which one.
Yeah, that's all right. But what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success, Terry?
Trying to please an audience of one. 100 years from now, you and I are going to be gone, and we're not going to be measured by how big the inheritance we left behind, but how well we treated other folks. That's only hard for me to live on the days that end in Y, but to the extent that I try to love God, to the extent that I try to treat other people, the more I do that, the better off I am. When I do something stupid and I'm ashamed of it the next morning, that's never good. But as I try to live a life that benefits others, that routinely points me in the right direction. I fall a lot, I stumble a lot, but that's the thing that keeps me moving forward. I could have retired a decade ago. My wife would have liked that. And honey, I eventually will, I promise. But part of the reason I keep coming back is so that we can contribute. It's in the Great Recession, I was like an orchestra conductor, and nobody wanted music. They didn't want hip hop, they didn't want jazz, they didn't want classical, they didn't want country or Western. And I was pretty good at some of that stuff, and nobody cared. And I was clinically depressed almost, not quite, but I was bummed out. And a few years later, we did 10 times as much business. I wasn't a better person, but I got more satisfaction because part of the skills I'd had were able to benefit other people. We could have retired then, but I came back because I like to add value to others. It's not the right answer for everybody, but that's part of what keeps me going.
That's an awesome response, and goes right into our last question. That's how do you like to give back?
We're involved with a local congregation, and so we're part of that body. There's a series of nonprofits that we contribute to. The people that I care about, I pray for, and the people on my team, I try to make them better off so that 100 years from now, when I'm gone, or maybe even 100 months from now, when I've retired, that they'll be better off. And relatively speaking, making money is not that hard. Well, if you have the right gifts, the right talent, and some things, it's relatively easy. But trying to make a permanent, long-term positive advantage to other folks, that's a bit of a stretch and takes a bit more strategic planning. But that's part of what I aim for. It doesn't mean I achieve it very often, but that's part of what I aim for.
No, thanks for sharing that, Terry, and giving back in that way. But most importantly, tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and find your book.
Thank you. Well, it's on Amazon. Let's see. It's called Building Legacy Wealth. And the second edition is coming out. It's going to have a slight word change. It's going to be How to Lead a Life Worth Imitating. And I can be found at SanDiegoApartmentBroker.com. And my email is tmoore1031@gmail. I was the first one in my county to have 1031 in my phone and my email. And guess what? I'm not the only one who does it now.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.